Hey there, this is Pat Ennis of Ennis Legacy Partners. Welcome to the Exit Readiness Podcast. I'm here with co-host Walter Dial and business partner Corby McGordon. Our mission here on the Exit Readiness Podcast is to provide you, the business owner, with subject matter expertise on topics pertaining to building sellable business value, and then for planning your eventual exit from the business. We want to help you build a business that's sellable or transferable and then exit successfully on your own terms and conditions. An employee stock ownership plan, or ESOP, is a qualified retirement plan that allows employees to gradually become indirect owners of the business they're helping to build. And shares are allocated to employee accounts over time based on factors such as compensation or years of service. And for many privately held businesses, an ESOP can serve as a thoughtful ownership transition plan, providing liquidity to the owner, rewarding and retaining employees, and offering some real significant, meaningful tax advantages, and allowing the company to remain independent while ownership gradually shifts to the people inside the business. And an ESOP strategy can be used and is helpful in transitioning a family business. So today, we're going to discuss the benefits of an ESOP in a family business transfer. Our guest we're excited to have with us Kelly Finnell. Kelly's one of the nation's premier ESOP consultants, having spent more than 40 years helping business owners design and execute ESOPs. He's sought after speaker, nationally, internationally, really, as well as an author. He's published dozens of articles on the use of ESOPs, and he's written one of the most comprehensive books available on the topic, The ESOP Coach: Using ESOPs in Ownership Succession Planning. Kelly serves as a consistent pillar in the ESOP community as an active member of the National Center for Employee Ownership, NCEO, and the ESOP Association, and numerous other professional and community organizations. He's got a law degree from the University of Memphis. He has the accredited investment fiduciary professional designation. Kelly, thanks for joining us. We're excited to have you with us. It's good to see you again, and we're looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks, Pat. It's great to be with you.
Hey, Kelly. Thanks for joining. We've talked about ESOPs on this podcast before, and I think it's always of interest to our listeners. But I think it's going to be really neat today to kind of match up what we've talked about with ESOPs and how that can fit into the family business exit planning. Because I think a lot of people just assume there really isn't a fit because ESOPs are, for huge companies. So before we dive into the fit specifically of family businesses, can you just review for our listeners what you feel are like the general parameters for when a business could be looking at an ESOP where it could make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, Walter. There are, of course, financial considerations and what we sometimes call soft considerations. So, in terms of the financial considerations, a business needs to have at least $2 million of adjusted EBITDA and at least 35 employees to be a good candidate. In terms of the soft considerations, it is critical that a company have a strong successor management team in order to be a good candidate. An ESOP is a form of internal transition. And anytime you have an internal transition, it implies that you have to have a strong successor management team. The founder of the company is going to be using the plan as their exit strategy. And so there needs to be someone there with experience that can run the company. I often say the best candidate for an ESOP is a company where the boss comes in late, leaves early, and takes a long lunch. You might have a business owner who's already delegated the operation of their company to the successor, and that is a really strong candidate. That doesn't have to be the case. You could use the ESOP as a springboard to create an internal management transition, but making sure that there's a plan and that plan is executed is really, really important. Also, in terms of soft considerations, an ESOP works really well where the success of the company is based on company culture. An owner knows that if they sell to a third party, culture is destined to change. The culture of the company is going to be the culture of the acquirer. And so the majority of our clients are professional services companies, engineering firms, architectural firms, firms where the success of the company is based on its culture. Also, where business owners see the company almost as one of their children, and they're focused on legacy planning. I've had business owners tell me that there's been a business in this city. For example, an ESOP we did a few years ago for a firm in Dallas. There had been a business in the city of Dallas with this company's name on it for 105 years. And it was really important to this business owner that that remain. And they were concerned that if they sold to a third party, the identity of the company would change. And they just weren't willing to accept that. And then the final soft consideration is what I call a compassionate capitalist, someone who wants to do well for himself and his family, but at the same time wants to take care of those people that help them get to the point where they could execute this strategy. So I've got this thing I call the greed scale. On one end of the greed scale is Mother Teresa. On the other end is Gordon Gekko. In order to be a good candidate for an ESOP, you don't have to be Mother Teresa looking to give your business away, but you can't be Gordon Gekko thinking only about yourself and trying to squeeze the last penny of this out for your own benefit without being concerned for the future financial security of your employees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Then Kelly, the idea of ESOPs in a family business, there's a nuance there as opposed to, a group of people saying, well, rather than third party, we're going to do ESOP. What are the things that you see in an owner that would say, I'll do this instead of passing it on to the kids?
Well, I see situations where they do both, where they do an ESOP and pass a portion on to the kids. So, a classic example would be a situation where a business owner has two children. One of them is active in the business, the other one is inactive, and the business owner knows that passing the company to the two of them is just a formula for disaster. The interest of the active and the inactive are going to be very divergent. The active child is going to want to have capital to reinvest in the business. The inactive child is going to want to take every penny out of the company as a distribution for their own financial security. And so we often use ESOPs in that kind of situation. And the business owner sells a portion, maybe 49% to the ESOP, takes the cash from that, and that becomes the inheritance of the inactive child. And then the active child inherits the 51% and manages the business and then eventually benefits from the sale of that 51%. So that's a classic case for us to use an ESOP in a family owned company. We also have situations where a business owner needs to sell 100% of the company to have the liquidity that they need for their future financial security. They might have an active child, but that active child doesn't have the cash or credit ability to borrow the money to buy out dad. And so perhaps the business owner sells 100% of the stock to the ESOP, but at the same time names the son as CEO. So the son might not have control of the stock, but they are going to be able to operate the company and receive salary and bonuses from that. So those are the two situations, Corby, where we often see ESOPs in family-owned companies.
So do you run into, with family situations and ESOPs, Kelly, do you run into challenges maybe relationally, emotionally, or in any other way that you don't run into, that we don't run into when it's not a family business situation.
Absolutely, Pat. The family dynamic always complicates things, as I'm sure you guys experience in your business all the time. And so a family dynamic creates emotions and expectations and all sorts of negative things like jealousy. And so it often is very helpful in those kinds of situations if we have a business coach that we're working alongside, because we don't deal with that. We deal with executing an ESOP transaction, but oftentimes much more than that is needed in these situations. And so if they have a business coach who can help them navigate that part of it, then that's extremely helpful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and along that lines, we know that at times parents can have a view of their children which may not be entirely objective. Can you speak to, you mentioned the management team, but then the idea of growth and almost the fire in the belly kind of concept for a successful ESOP?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. All the statistics indicate that second generation family businesses often fail, and third generation family businesses frequently fail. But again, that is a business coaching issue that we work alongside, but we don't get involved in coaching uh, business owners on how to deal with that. But you're absolutely right. It's very difficult to be objective about your own family members and their capabilities. And so it's critical to have a professional involved who can help you assess
Mhm.
that on
Mhm.
an objective basis.
Yeah, thanks for that kind of plug there, Kelly. Is that's it's one of the things that we do is we help with that shepherding, if you will, along and the coaching and the training of the successors, so that they can take that business to the next level because it needs to go to the next level, because there's going to be debt and and the revenues hopefully are going to continue to go up and profitability as well. And so, yes, that child in the business who's going to be running the company absolutely needs to be able to have the chops, if you will, to take the business to the next level.
Hey,
Yeah,
Kelly, let me ask you a question. I come from a tax background, so when I think of ESOPs, I always think of the potential for avoiding the capital gains tax. And I always find it interesting whenever we're talking to ESOP people, it's like you have to drag that out of them. So, I mean, is that just like a side benefit that they get? Or have you had situations where that's been the primary driving force in setting up the ESOP?
Well, there are two major tax benefits that's available to owners and to their companies in an ESOP transaction. So the one that you're referencing is the tax benefit that's available to the owners. In 1984, Congress added a section to the Internal Revenue Code, Section 1042, which is a like kind exchange provision. And so it works in a very similar way to 1031 and 1035, the other two like kind exchange provisions in the code. And the concept is I own a piece of property, the stock in my closely held company. And if I sell that property to an ESOP and then take the money from that sale and reinvest it in like kind property, which would be the stocks or bonds of a U.S. domestic operating company, and if I follow all of the other rules, and as you can imagine, there's about 10 pages of rules that apply to 1042, but you follow all of those rules, and then there is no tax on the gain that results from the sale to the ESOP. But the caveat is, like other like kind exchanges, the owner has a transferred basis in the reinvestment which is referred to under 1042 as qualified replacement property. So a simple example, I have zero cost basis in the stock of my closely held company. I sell it for $10 million. I reinvest in 1042. I buy $10 million worth of Google stock. I paid $10 million for that Google stock, but for tax purposes, my cost basis is zero because my basis was transferred from the basis in the stock of my closely held company, which was zero. So if I ever sell that Google stock, I'm going to pay the gain on that $10 million, assuming it hasn't appreciated. If it's appreciated, then I'm going to pay the gain on whatever the value is at that point. So that is a great opportunity for business owners to defer the gain and perhaps even eliminate the gain if they can hold the qualified replacement property until death and their estate gets a stepped up basis. Then the tax deferral becomes a tax forgiveness. So we often see people investing in very conservative income producing assets with the hope of holding on to that until death. So that's a big potential tax benefit. We see that tax benefit being used most often on the East Coast and the West Coast and the high tax jurisdictions. We see it used far less often in Tennessee, in Texas, and other states that don't have such a confiscatory state tax structure. The other tax benefit, and the reason perhaps that 1042, as you referenced, Walter, isn't discussed as often, is a much more significant tax benefit, and that's the tax benefit for the company. If you have a 100% ESOP owned S corporation, then that corporation's income is never again going to be subject to tax. There's no tax at the company level because it's an S corp, a flow through entity, and there's no tax at the shareholder level because, as Pat referenced earlier, we're going to have the stock held by the ESOP trustee. And like the trustee of a 401k plan, the other form of qualified plan people are most familiar with, that trustee is exempt from tax. And so no tax at the company level because we have a pass-through entity, no tax at the shareholder level because we passed our income through to a tax-exempt entity, the ESOP trustee. So that dwarfs the 1042 tax benefit. So that's the tax benefit that I hear people talk about most often, is the ability to operate your for-profit company as if it were a church or a synagogue on a tax-free basis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Kelly, you mentioned culture, and culture is so critical. And just like you have the greed scale, is there some kind of culture scale too that says, okay, this culture is strong enough to actually perform well in an ESOP versus we're going to shape the culture once we do the ESOP?
Well, I would say that if a business owner tells me that the key to their success is culture, then I know I have a great candidate. If I don't get that input during an early meeting, then I want to make sure that they're focused on establishing a strong ESOP communication program so that they can build that 100% employee-owned culture after the transaction. So when I first got in the business back in the early 80s, I was naive and I assumed that if an owner announced to their employees that the employees were going to own the company and it wasn't going to cost them anything to own it, that after the meeting, all the employees would come up to the owner and give them a big hug and say, "Thanks, boss." Yeah, that's not realistic. That's not what happens. Employees don't understand initially what the ESOP is, how it works, and how it's going to benefit them. And you're only going to get that bang for your buck and get that appreciation to the extent that you commit to having a strong, consistent employee communication program. So that's something that we help our clients with. We provide electronic newsletters that they can send to people quarterly. We will do annual meetings for them. We'll do a frequently asked question document. We will just provide them all of the materials that they need to help people understand what the ESOP is. And as a result of them understanding, they're going to appreciate it. One big caveat, that might take 3 to 5 years. If you have an engineering firm where you have highly educated people, then it's going to take 3 years. If you have a less educated workforce, then it's going to take longer, which I think is just perfectly logical. And so it takes time and work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Kelly, in regard to the transaction, describe the different professional roles that are needed, what your role would be, and then what other professionals are needed. And then, to whatever degree you can, give an idea of how much an owner could expect to invest financially to make this happen. Because that's always a big question.
Of course.
How much is this going to cost me? Yeah, there's tax benefits, and yeah, there's all these benefits, but what's the price tag on this? So, who are the professionals, and how what to expect in regard to price?
In terms of professionals, we're always referred into a case by a professional. We don't market directly to business owners. And so that is usually an exit planner, a business coach, an attorney, a commercial banker, or an investment banker. So those are the kinds of front end professionals that we deal with. So then we will have a meeting with that professional who referred us in and with the business owner. And during that meeting, which we don't charge a fee for, we'll answer all of their questions. We'll help them understand, and we'll get the information that we need in order to determine whether or not they might be a good candidate. If they are, and if they're interested in going to the next step, then they'll engage us to do a feasibility study. And in that study, we'll give them all of the financial modeling they need in order to see if this is the right strategy for them. So assuming that it is, then the next step is when the other professionals get involved. That's implementation. So as part of the buyer team, we're going to have the ESOP trustee who's going to be the purchaser in the transaction. That trustee is going to have a team. The first person on that team is going to be their valuation advisor. And their valuation advisor needs to be someone who has years of not just valuation experience, but ESOP valuation experience. And then they're going to have an experienced ESOP attorney on their team. So that's the buyer team. The seller team is going to be us as the ESOP consultant, the advisor who brought us in, and their attorney. And so when people ask me, what are the major problems with ESOPs? I always tell them, too many damn lawyers involved in the deal. So you got the company lawyer, you got me and my partner who are lawyers, you got the trustee's lawyer, and then you end up with bank counsel because most of these transactions are funded in part with a bank loan. So lots of lawyers involved. There's a lot of complexity involved. That's the reason you have all of these lawyers. And so when you have complexity in lawyers, you have fees. And so I think at a minimum, a business owner could expect their total all-in cost to be $500,000, and it could go up to maybe $750,000, depending upon the team that they engage. That's a lot of money. And so, as part of our feasibility study, we provide them a more precise estimate of what their fees are going to be. And then we answer the question, what do you get for all of this money? And so we do a cost benefit analysis where we compare the fees to the net present value of the tax benefits. As you referenced, Pat, that's the balance. And that's why I always say that in order to be a good candidate, you need at least $2 million of EBITDA. If you have $2 million of EBITDA, then your fees are going to be less than 5% of the tax benefit. And so that cost benefit analysis works. If you have $500,000 of EBITDA, then your fees in the first year are going to soak up all of your earnings plus some, and the cost benefit is going to be, is going to take forever to repay, to recoup your cost.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and then along that lines, Kelly, you always hear that, oh my goodness, even once you've done an ESOP, they're expensive to keep going. Um, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's expense involved, but those expenses shrink in comparison to the implementation fees. So, in terms of ongoing, you still have the trustee. So, you have a trustee fee, but the trustee's fee on an ongoing basis is going to be significantly less than their transaction fee. You're going to have the valuation firm, but again, their fee is going to be significantly less than their transaction fee. And you're going to have a new party, a TPA, a third party administrator. And so most businesses have a TPA for their 401k plan. And they might assume at the beginning that they're just going to use that same firm, but that usually doesn't work out. Most 401k administrators aren't capable of administering an ESOP. And so you're probably going to hire a specialized TPA for that function. And that's going to have a cost associated with it, but it's not a really crazy expensive fee. It's going to be more than the fee for the 401k TPA, but it's not going to be a significant deal. So you might have $75,000 in ongoing fees, which, as I said, pales in comparison to the implementation, but it's not inconsequential.
Yeah, good, good. And then, can you speak to governance too? Like, I'm familiar with a non-family ESOP, but board members, etc. What are the requirements?
Yep. So corporate governance in any situation, whether you have an ESOP company or not, starts with the shareholders as the base of the pyramid. So the shareholders control who is going to be on the board. The shareholders elect the company's board of directors, and then the board of directors is responsible for hiring, monitoring, and perhaps firing the officers of the company. So, whether you have an ESOP company or a non ESOP company, that all remains the same. The difference is the identity of the shareholder. Before the transaction, I owned the company, I was the shareholder, I elected the board, I had total control. After the transaction, I'm no longer the shareholder, the ESOP trustee is. Now, ESOP trustees don't want to be running businesses. They don't know how, they don't have the expertise, they don't have the time. Most importantly, they don't have the insurance to cover them if they make a mistake. So ESOP trustees are going to rely on the existing company management team for their advice on who they should elect as the company's board of directors. Before the transaction, most of our clients don't have any independent directors. They're all insiders, they're employees. One of the things that the trustee is going to require if you do a majority ESOP transaction is that the company bring on some independent directors. So a typical structure would be 3 insiders and 2 independent directors. The trustee is not going to go out and find those independent directors. The trustee is going to rely on recommendations from the existing pre-transaction management team, and the trustee is going to evaluate the capability of those folks, make sure that they're independent, and then based on that, elect them as the director team. So the 3 insiders and the 2 independents as the director team for the company going forward.
Very good, very good. And and then one last question, kind of along this lines. We know that in a lot of family businesses, family members work in the business, and does that dynamic change if an ESOP is done where there are
Yeah. It doesn't have to. The only requirement with respect to family members and to compensation of family members and to perks for family members, the ESOP trustee is not going to tell a business owner after the transaction, all of those things have to go away. But what the trustee is going to say is you have to tell us in advance what those things are going to be, because those items impact the company's earnings. And as a purchaser, that's what we're buying. We're buying the company's future earnings. So all of those things are going to be incorporated into the stock purchase agreement. Which family members are going to work, what they're going to be paid, what their perks are going to be. And then each year, when the valuation firm comes back to update its valuation, it's going to check the company's financials and what's actually happened during the year versus what the company said was going to happen in the stock purchase agreement. And so they're going to monitor. So the company and the owner are going to tell the purchaser in advance what it's going to do after the transaction. And then there is a system for monitoring that to make sure that they stay good to their word.
So Kelly, we've come to the end of our time here. I'm going to ask you in a minute or two if you'd like to provide your contact information and if there's anything you want to promote. But before I do that, is there anything else that you would suggest to a family-owned business? Maybe 1, 2, 3 steps. That's kind of like we like to leave listeners with a few action steps they can take if this topic is at all of interest to them. So, in closing, is there 1, 2, or 3 things that you might suggest to an owner of a family business who's considering ESOPs that they could take?
I think the most important thing is for them to educate themselves. There are so many business owners out there that don't even know that an ESOP is an option. They know that selling to a strategic buyer or a financial buyer, dying with their boots on, leaving the company to their children, they know about those options, but it's amazing how few business owners even know that an ESOP might be worth considering. So educate yourself. You can go to our website. It's full of educational information. You can go to my book, The ESOP Coach, and there are case studies in there. One of the things that I've learned over the last 45 years is that business owners learn best by relating to real life case stories. And so there are case stories about business owners who have sold a family company or an interest in a family company to an ESOP. They can go in there, read the details of that, see if that seems like it might be something that they're interested in, and then let's have a call to discuss their situation, their questions, and help them determine whether or not it might make sense to go to the next step, which would be an ESOP feasibility study.
Okay, fantastic. Is there anything you'd like to promote today? And then if someone does want to contact you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I would just suggest that you start out slow in this education process. So we have something on our website. It's a little 3-page piece called a strategy guide. You can go to the website, download that. Then if you want to take the next step, get the book. And then if you want to take the next step, let's have a call. So our website address is www.execfin.com, EXECFIN.com. And we also have our contact information there as well.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Kelly. We really appreciate you being here with us today. Extremely helpful, as we knew it would be. And listeners, if you want help in thinking through this, maximizing the value of your business, or planning for that eventual exit, you can contact us here at ESOP Partners through our website, NSLP.com or exitreadiness.com. Either one of those gets you there. You can also access a number of free exit-related assessments on our website. So thank you for listening. And if you've benefited from today's episode, please consider liking it and sharing it on social media. That's always helpful. And until next time on the Exit Readiness Podcast, this is Pat Ennis and Walter Dial with Corby McGordon signing off.